We are women who love God and want to use our influence for good. No matter how ordinary we may feel, we each have a powerful purpose in the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is our time to step forward, to love fiercely, to lead boldly, to live happily, to fill the world with His light. Let's do it together on the Magnify podcast.
Hi, Magnify listeners. I'm podcast producer Sarah Collins, and I'm so excited because I get to join you guys today. So Kathryn is out on vacation for spring break. We just wrapped General Conference. We had a wonderful long weekend full of all these messages from our leadership. So I've invited some ladies to join in a little panel of our quick reactions to General Conference, how we felt this weekend, what were the messages that inspired us. And I really think from their different life perspectives, what they have to say is really going to be something you're going to want to stick around for. Before we get into this exciting episode, there's 4 of us joined here today. Can we quickly introduce ourselves? Maybe just say your name because our listeners know you. And then how did you spend General Conference weekend? And if you could sum up General Conference in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? Maybe I'm throwing you guys on the spot, but I can start. I spent General Conference with my family. I was able to sneak in a little bit of skiing on Saturday, which is my favorite thing to do. And on Sunday, we were with my nieces and nephews, and I have a lot of them. So that actually leads me to my 3 words. And the first one is chaotic. And that's okay for me. I like to operate with a little bit of chaos. My nieces and nephews were loud and there's chatter and games being played, but I think that's kind of what adds to the beauty of a weekend like this, is you get to be with family. My second word I would say is hopeful. And then the last word was simple. And that's because I got some simple answers that I was looking for. Nothing that I needed was too big or extravagant. Okay, so Shima, you start.
Okay, I'm Shima Baughman. I spent my conference one day traveling, the other day home watching it with the candy and all the bingo and the kids. But 3 words I'd use to describe conference was exciting, comforting, and peaceful.
I'm Mindy Brown, and I spent my conference weekend at home with my husband mostly. I did have one session with my 3-year-old grandson, so I got to play knights and build a train while I was listening with him. That was fun. And my 3 words probably, 2 would be hope-filled. I felt like there was a lot of hope expressed that I was grateful for, and refreshing. It's always nice to have a little slightly different paced weekend, I think, and Sunday especially. So
I agree.
So good. My name's Kaylen Nelson. I spent mine at my house. My sisters were there with their kids. So chaotic is a word that I have on mine. And I'm also a new mom. And so my whole life, I've just been able to enjoy conference like relatively quietly or without responsibility. You know, like everybody else is chasing their kids, but I'm not. And so these conferences are getting more complicated as I'm trying to listen. And so I loved the talk Rays and Pillars. So I feel like there were some rays that were maybe penetrating the chaos as I was here and there and everywhere and trying to host. So chaotic, rays, and then I would say simple. It felt simple for me. A very back to basics, which I always appreciate.
Yes, it's kind of fun to put you guys on the spot, see what came up, but it's fun to hear all of our different life circumstances. Kaylen, I kind of agree. I'm watching the nieces and nephews, but I don't have to chase them down. I can be like, all right, you guys go in the other room, you know? So I love it. Okay, well, let's get into our discussion. So as a Magnify community, part of our mission is to help Latter-day Saint women feel like they can be a significant force for good. So did you guys hear anything this weekend that felt that message that was empowering and exciting for you and for our community?
Yeah, and I don't know if you want us to go and say more, but one of the things I've noticed is that we're kind of building on our understanding of covenants, I think, in the last few years. I mean, getting more in depth of how we understand them. And I was thinking, as I was listening to Sister Dennis's talk and a couple others, of when I was a kid. So I grew up Muslim, and we would sacrifice a goat, as Jewish people do, as we read in the Bible, right? And Mindy, I know you'd geek out on this because she's an expert on all these things. But we had this goat, and I remember my dad bringing home this beautiful goat, and it was beautiful and perfect as they have to be, right, to be sacrificed. And we had no idea as children. I was 5, right? and we're playing with this goat and it was so wonderful. And then all of a sudden, it has to be sacrificed. And it was just like this, like obviously jarring, like horrible memory as a kid to think, wow, we had to like bring this beautiful, perfect little baby goat and then sacrifice it for God. And I just think of, sometimes we think today of how hard it might be to live our covenants. And I just think in some ways, yes, it is hard, but in most ways it's not way like more beautiful. And it's not like that. It's like, actually you get to just feel the joy of having the coat of skins on us, right? We don't have to kill a baby animal anymore once a year. Instead, every day we get to wear a symbol of our Savior and remember him and remember that we don't have to kill any animals because he's already paid that price. I mean, that was the most exciting thing to me for conference, of just putting those covenants in that different perspective and a little bit more, the depth that we got from some of the talks about covenants. There were so many talks about covenants, so many talks about that. And that was just really exciting to think of the power as women that we have, that we get to wear Jesus Christ, that we get to have him with us all the time, not just once a year as we kill a baby animal, as most, some religions do. But that was just so exciting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I agree that, I like you said, Shima, I was totally listening to all that and was excited about all the temple talks and covenant talk that we heard. But one of the things that I was super, super grateful for was Elder Kieran's message was so unbelievably full of light and encouragement and just joy. Like I just soaked it in and was so grateful for it. But I loved that he specifically made this emphasis that these things should make us happy now. Like it's not just later. And I think that's something that makes a difference to our young people, especially where I have 4, grown up children kind of all in their 20s and young 30s. And then I work with young adults in a big YSA stake and everything. And I think they don't really want to hear that it's only for later and so far away, but it's actually supposed to make a difference now, today, right now. And that is just a joyful message to me. And I'm glad that we've been given some great quotables and talking points really to emphasize that.
Well, and to your, I've said very facetiously to my students before, like, is it a very good plan if only like 5% make it to the top, like are the top echelons? Like that kind of sounds like a crappy plan if that's like the outcome. And so Elder Kieran, he's talking about the plan and he's saying like, this is the plan of redemption. So it should redeem us. This is a plan of mercy. So mercy will be extended. This is a plan of salvation. It's going to save us. And he wants to save, again, for the record, we're all going from notes and memory because nothing is published, so it just, they're all from our brains. But that's my recollection. My recollection is that he said that the point of this plan is to save all his children, that all of us are capable of the top tier, and that this isn't just this like remote, isolated group. And how incredibly empowering is that? Again, I believe that. Hence my comments to my students to get them to think about. But now, to Mindy's point, to have these quotes, these talking points to like ground that and say that's not just Sister Nelson's hopeful perspective, but that really is like the doctrine of Christ. The doctrine of Christ is that not just the few.
I loved his line. We have to talk about him because it was like, I think everyone loved Elder Kieran's talk, and it was so neat to hear his first talk as an apostle. But he said, God is in relentless pursuit of us, that he wants to do everything he can to get us back. And not just like the 5%, like you said, Kaylen, it's everyone, all of us. He wants all of us. And isn't that such a peaceful message? Like he wants all of us. It's not just a select few. It's the most inclusive plan, right?
That's right.
I wrote down this line. He said, everything about the Father's plan is designed to bring everyone home. That feels really, really different to me than like what we maybe feel or hear out in the world or whatever. And then also he said something about how he has employed every measure to get us there. So
yes,
I love that that's what was exciting to you, to all of you.
Yeah. Well, and I would just point out too, that there were lots of other little bits that really supported what he was saying. Like Elder Anderson's talk, there were 2 phrases that jumped out at me, because I, like everyone, love several who are kind of wandering or are taking a parallel path or a tangent or, and Elder Anderson, speaking to those loved ones who've turned away, specifically mentioned, at least for now, and don't despair. And I just thought, every time a prophet or apostle can throw in a mention of like, but it's all going to work out. It's all okay. It's just for right now. That's huge. That is huge.
And Mindy, President Eyring's whole talk was that, right? Where he's just like,
yes.
There was a flood in Idaho and we didn't know where our children were. But what I thought and felt and the Spirit told him was that because of our temple covenants, it's going to be okay. And I think, Mindy, even with those that are taking a tangent, right? Like if they're your children, if they're your, our temple covenants will help our posterity. I think a lot of parents, right, are just stressed about their children, but knowing that our temple covenants also cover them is very peaceful. And just knowing that it will all work out. And in the celestial perspective, people have choices, but it will work out. And it does. I agree with you. Every time at conference, those messages of kind of, it's all going to be okay, just resonate with my heart. And it just gives me peace.
Definitely.
For the record, Henry B. Eyring sleeping when his children
that was hilarious.
Are in a flood.
Oh my gosh.
I was like
life goals.
Giggling about this. I guess it's like, 50 years ago, but it wasn't 50 years ago for me. It was today for me. And I am listening to that going,
was so
if
funny.
I was his wife, I would have done the same and maybe like slightly more violently. Like, how could you?
But isn't that exactly what you'd expect an apostle? Like, you think of Jesus on the boat where there's a storm around him and he's got his pillow and he's sleeping on the boat. And like, that's
carest thou not?
He's like, I care, but I know it's going to work out, right?
And you're like, in the moment, I care a little more than I know.
That's exactly
seriously.
I love it.
So
as I'm watching all of us, there is excitement. I love that all these messages were really empowering for all of us in different ways. I will say something that was empowering and exciting for me, and I know all of us probably felt like President Holland's message was just a grand slam off the top of conference, right? And he said something about how he felt all the prayers of people praying for him when he was sick, when his wife was sick before she passed away. And it was empowering for me because I feel like sometimes I forget that there are people praying and that you can literally feel those prayers if you tap into it, right? I remember being like, even like when I was a missionary, you kind of remember like all the little kids around the world saying, please bless the missionaries and please bless, and I feel like it was a call to me to remember that people are praying for us because people pray I love the faith of members getting, in prayers, they say, bless the needy, bless those who have this and this. And I think that that's happening all around the world. So that was actually something that was empowering for me.
Yeah,
yes.
That was
I had the same notes that you did, Sarah, on that with this reporter saying the power of all the children praying across the world, or Elder Anderson talking about how, what did he say, that the angels will have charge over us. And Elder Bowen, I don't know if anyone caught that talk. That was like an unusually amazing talk where Elder Bowen talked about basically his patriarchal blessing, allowing him the ability to bring people back from the dead. And he, him blessing his mom and him being able to lift a truck off his daughter. I mean, that was like something I wrote down with like exclamation points of, we have this power, the priesthood power that we have through our covenant, allow us to ask God for these types of things. Like, that's why, like, President Nelson always talking about power. Like, what is that power? It's the power to heal. It's the power to, for some, bring back from the dead. That's the kind of thing that's like, wow, right? We have this power as women. Like, that is exciting that we can call on our priesthood powers to pray and to bless those that around us. I just think, wow, right? Just some of the stories, I don't know, that Elder Bowen's talk just stood out so much to me. I'm like, wow.
Well, just to connect back to Elder Holland, that his language, I re-listened to his talk this morning on the way to work, on the way in, and he said, I was called forth. I was called back from the other side. It was some language like that. And again, you guys are proving you have much better notes than I do, but it was some language like that of like, the power of prayer, but then also in contrast that his prayers for Pat and our prayers for Pat were answered in a different way. And so there is the power and the power can affect change. That doesn't mean that always the change that we want happens, but to say that it never does or that it won't is not correct. Anyway, I thought that's an interesting connection. I forgot about Shane Bone's talk. Not that I it was yesterday, but you're right. What a powerful talk.
That was amazing.
I love it. So with all of us, and we all have different circles of influence, we're all in different stages of life. But I think, was there any theme or message that specifically what you felt like was meant for you after this weekend?
A message that I felt like was specifically for me, or that I saw as a recurring theme, I don't know. I've seen so many wandering, so many that are close to me. And I was having a conversation with a couple of friends about how vulnerable I feel. It's not because I feel like I'm especially weak. I'm kind of the personality that's like, it's not like that would never happen to me. It's like, I'm way more of the like, Lord, is it I type of a personality of like, I don't see myself above that, like as a possibility at all. So when I see some of my friends wandering, and people that I love, I'm like, whoa, I am susceptible. Right. And so we were talking about that feeling of like being susceptible, to walk away and the act of choosing to stay. Anyway, so that was kind of my thoughts throughout. And I was, it's like good things. But President Nelson's talk, he gave some promises at the end, and it really reminded me of how much covenants and temple had been throughout the whole conference. And so his quote, "Nothing will help you more to hold fast to the iron rod than worshiping in the temple as regularly as your circumstances permit." And based on my location geographically, my circumstances permit way more than I am. And so that was the lightning bolt that helped me remember and see throughout the rest of conference of like, I am reading my scriptures. I am saying my prayers. I need to keep doing those things. But like, where's the improvement? And I really think the improvement for me is temple attendance and making that a bigger priority. So that was for sure a message that was meant for me.
Yeah. Kaylen, I feel the same way about what I totally resonate with. I do feel like I'm susceptible. I'm in this stage of life where friends are feeling a lot of feelings, and the temple was also a really important message. I think that will come up again and again in my notes of covenant keeping and temple worship.
Yeah. Yeah. I love too that it seemed like we had multiple references to the idea of finding the ideal balance. Like Elder Stevenson's talk was really all about finding that beautiful balance between loving God and loving others. And Elder Renland, I mean, his talk was amazing. I loved his, but I love that there was that portion where he led into it. I think he said something like, appropriately loving others. And when he said appropriately, I braced just a little because I thought, oh, what's about to follow? And what followed was like, just sing it from the rooftops. It was like, it's not appropriate to judge others. You don't understand. I mean, and I'm just going off the top of my head on memory on that, but it just seemed like he had like 4 or 5 things in rapid succession that were perfect examples. And I thought, oh, thank you again for the language and for quotables that we can say, remember Elder Renland suggested this. And it just sometimes carries more weight coming from an apostle than from a mom or from a daughter, right? A friend or something. And anyway, I just love that it was this repeating message woven through several of them. And, you love it when you hear it in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses like that in a short space of time. So that's always exciting.
That was so good. My thought, I was thinking about kind of the people I'm surrounded with, right? People that have children that are, there's unanswered prayers. Life hasn't turned out in ways that they want. And then my students who are in this massively important time in their life. And there's so much anxiety for them of, where's my job? Am I going to get married? Am I, all this anxiety. And what we're all looking for is happiness. And I think President Uchtdorf's talk on happiness, where just basically how, the world has all these ways that they think that we could find happiness, right? And it's self-care and let's, go get a spa, a pedicure and all these things. And, the science and actually reality proves that that's not what gives you joy. And what he said is if you bring others joy, you'll get more joy yourself. That joy multiplies. And so it's funny because the world will say, like, remove yourself from all the negative things and, take time for yourself, which totally, yes, you definitely need to take care of yourself. Like Jesus went to the mountains and prayed a lot, right? And he got away, and we all need to do that. But I just think the recipe of the gospel is what will bring us true happiness. And that's what I think can help my students. It can help all the moms I know, all the people leaving the church, right? You're seeking happiness. We all are, right? That's what number one human desire, happiness, right? Number one type of book that's sold in the world is happiness books. People trying to find happiness and lose weight. I think those are the top. But I just think like the gospel, like you said earlier, Mindy, it's simple. It's those simple things. It's like, that's what's going to find us happiness. There's no like secret recipe out there in the world that's not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that was so exciting to me. They answer my questions, all my mom friends' questions, all my students' questions, is that's where I'm going to find happiness.
I loved Elder Uchtdorf's as well. That's where that message did originate for me too. And I think that we're totally not, I don't think we're supposed to look at everything with like rose colored glasses and like, it's all gonna, like you said, there was time that the Lord himself wept or went to the mountain and was alone. But I think the most powerful line Elder Uchtdorf said was, we rarely find something we aren't looking for. The reason I think happiness was a word that stuck out to me and something that was specifically meant for me was going back to one of my 3 words, simple. Like, I think that I have sometimes complicated things in my life, and it's like to my own detriment, to my own, I don't need to be doing that. And I'm probably looking for those things to kind of, and I think that life is complex, so it's going to happen naturally. But I had this impression, like, you really, Sarah, you need to simplify. You need to look and put the Savior at the forefront of the things you're doing, the decisions you're making.
And Elder Taylor's talk also went along with that. He said, the greater power in your life comes through the focus on joy. And Elder Uchtdorf too. I forget now, he's not president anymore. He's elder.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. But anyway, I loved this other line. He said, seek and you will find. If we seek joy, then we will find it. And I just thought that was so brilliant. It's so true in every way, in the secular science sense and as well in the spiritual sense. Like, if we just seek that joy, the simple joy.
That was so good. None of us have mentioned, but I just wanted to throw out there too. There were a couple of non-talk moments that stood out at me. Like to me, the music was spectacular. I thought the BYU Idaho and the UVU choirs were unbelievably beautiful.
Yes.
And those shining faces of young adults. I mean, what is it? It's like, that is hope filled when you see all of those students up there in that age group just glowing and beaming. That is super, super exciting, I think. And the choice of music, to hear Amazing Grace, that made my divinity school heart sing. I felt like we were really tapping into some of our Christian siblings' beautiful hymns as well. And it makes me excited for our new hymn book.
I hope it's in there. I hope it's in there. It should be in there.
As soon as it started, I was like, oh, please, please, please let this be in the new
hymn book. Announcement. Yeah.
Yes, I was really hoping. So we'll see. But the other thing that I totally loved, and I don't know if any of you noticed this, but I don't think a single speaker, male speaker, I'll clarify, referred to his wife as Sister So-and-so. They all used their first names. And I loved how real and authentic that felt to me.
Fascinating.
And right? It was so sweet to me. And then also when they would leave, as they would like file out with their spouse, I enjoyed, like, I didn't turn it off immediately because I just was like, no, I just want to watch that again, every session. I thought that was a really nice thing to see their faces, to see them look at each other. And I just thought there was a lot of beauty shown in their personal relationships. And with all this talk of temples and covenants and the sealing ordinances being really what it's all about, to have that visual to go with that, I thought was a beautiful reminder that we actually do really think that and we believe that, and it is exhibited in our lives. And so anyway, I thought that was powerful. I loved those pieces of it.
Well, and I don't know if you saw the last session, they had maybe a little extra time. So they're panning and Elder Suarez is wiping tears, and then they pan to the General Relief Society presidency, and President Johnson is wiping away tears, and she leans over to Sister Yee, and we read her lips. We tried.
You could read her lips. I did too. I know what she said.
She said something to the effect of, "How many more times?"
Yeah.
Or me, something like,
for Nelson.
as President Nelson's being wheeled out, and they both, Sister Yee has tears in her face. And they both, it was something, and maybe you read lips better, and I didn't write it down, but it was something like, how many more times?
Yeah, I noticed as well. And it was moving. I mean, I don't remember a time where we've had so many sit to deliver their talks and go out in wheelchairs. I mean, it was a real sense of, we have big changes in the next year or two or three, right? There's no avoiding it. But
also like so precious, every word out of his mouth, right? Yes. And the fact that he chose to give his one address about our covenants and just spending time in the temple. I mean, if he's like going to leave us, which I hope he doesn't for another 5 years or longer, as long as the Lord wants to have him on this earth, but that's what he wants to tell us. It's just so much more precious, right? I think to me, I'm like, I want to study every word, because usually we hear him several times and we just heard one address, and that's one. And, he said to study D&C 109. And I'm like, okay, I already read it. And I want to keep studying it, because what he's feeling right now, I mean, he's so close to the veil that all the things that he's going to say, it's just precious words from a prophet, his final years, whatever they might be.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, can we talk about the prophet more? Because I do feel like that you guys are making me tear up over here. What about the prophet's message, besides the things we've already maybe mentioned, feel like you guys they hit you right in the heart?
Well, I loved when he said, and I wrote this down carefully to be sure I would get this right, but he said, regular temple worship will enhance the way you see yourself and how you fit into God's magnificent plan. I promise you that. And I think those 2 points really go back to this idea that it's meant to make your life better today. Like, it's not just for the distant eternities. It's not just while you're in the temple, but like when you come out, how are you different for it? And those 2 things, to see yourself clearly and how you fit, I don't know that we could use 2 bigger blessings than that these days, especially for our younger people. I think that's so unbelievably valuable. And for him to wrap it up by saying, I promise you that. Like, anytime the prophet says, I promise, that ears perk up, right? And that's a pretty awesome promise.
The thing that was so exciting to me about President Nelson's message, and again, I listened to it only once so far, so I'm excited to study it again, but something that he told us that was so neat was, he reminded us of, we got all these Kirtland properties and what happened at the Kirtland Temple. And I read a book about that this year. And I don't know if like the average member of the church knows how miraculous some of the things that happened are, right? Elijah coming and, restoring the keys of the ceiling, Elias, Moses. And I think some of these are like deep doctrinal, like, kind of hard things to understand, but the way the prophet kind of broke it down as to what it means for us, right? This means all of us women and men, right, have the blessings of Abraham, and the blessings of Abraham in Genesis are just beautiful. It's, he'll be with us. He'll never leave us, right? He doesn't take a day off. And Kaylen, you know this now that you have kids, right? Once you have a kid, you don't get a day off. And God does not take a day off from us ever, right? Once he had us. And so that's comforting, right? Just to think like, and also the second thing that was so comforting for me is that miracles happened because if you read the dedicatory prayer, D&C 109, as you study it, they asked for these blessings. They asked for angels. They asked for these things. And those things came. The angels came. Many sightings of old prophets, right? Jesus Christ himself came. And so all of these things, if we ask for these miracles, as the prophet has promised us in a couple talks ago where he said, as hard things go up, right? Darkness goes up, miracles will also go up. Yeah. We can ask for these healing powers. We can ask for these things that we think are not possible in our time, right? We forget. It's like, this happened in 1836. It can happen again. We still can see angels. We can still, feel the hand of the Lord. And so I don't know, that was exciting to me where he was telling us, look, you have these powers. This is something that's possible if we ask. That's what I took. One of the things I took away.
That was great.
I think this would maybe lead into the final question I have for us as we're wrapping up. But was there anything after this weekend that you felt like you wanted to learn more about, go forward studying, or do differently? And I don't mean differently like do more or do, I think that as women, we maybe get caught up in those feelings. But I just, as you're sharing that, Shima, and we've said this and mentioned this a couple different times, I feel like I really need to know more what my relationship looks like with the Savior, and specifically my covenants. And honestly, like when garments were brought up a couple different times, there were so many things that I thought, I don't think I've asked myself these questions enough. I don't think I've ask myself, what can I do to know Jesus Christ? President Holland said it's an urgent matter. And I'm feeling that. I think that going forward, and I don't even know where to start. Maybe you guys have some tips for me, but I know that I need to focus on my covenant relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, well said. That's moving to hear from you. That's awesome. I felt similarly, and like we've already said, like Kaylen mentioned too, fitting in the temple better and more regularly. Like I was surprised how frequently regularly was added to that. And don't you love how the verbiage has changed where we talk so much more about worshiping in the temple and not just working in the temple? Like I think that is a very conscientious decision that a lot of people have made, that we're going to change the way we talk about that. But it's crucial.
Like I need God's love, pouring down. I need his raise, whatever raise I can get every week, because otherwise I'm not as nice a person and I'm not as happy when I'm not nice. And it just makes me nicer.
Well, and worshiping, it's so much more about rejoicing, right? Doesn't it just feel like I need to go to pour out my joy there?
Yeah.
It changes the reason why you go.
You get loved, right? Worship gives you love. And that's what I need. And that's what we all need.
Well, I like that that's where it came to, is that it's the temple that's going to help me with the thing I want to learn coming out of this weekend more, which is who is my Savior and how do I know him more? And it sounds like you guys have all said, it's the message we received of temples and covenants. And so I love that. That's going to be a really big focus for me. And so just to lead into kind of some final thoughts here, what would you guys say to someone like me, or to any of our women listening, just to how they could maybe take that first step in building their relationship with Christ, and knowing not everyone does have access to temples or has our testimonies, or we're all on different parts of the covenant path?
I'll start. I loved Elder Stevenson's when he just said, how do we do this? Well, we just start. I mean, that was just so great. Like, do something.
I love it. Thanks, Mindy.
I love the line. I can't now remember who said it, but they said, read his words, right? You want to get to know him, read his words. And when you don't have access to temples, like during COVID, that's what I did. And it works as well, right? It works so great. Just read his words. Even if you read 5 verses every day, just 5 verses, right? Read his words. That's a good start. Every day, just 5 verses. That's all.
That's so doable.
So doable. We can all do 5 verses.
Yeah.
If I could say one thing about how to continue to build, I think some of my takeaways, and maybe it's just my life currently and whatever, but that faith is a choice, and that sometimes we really genuinely are choosing to stay. And I think that that's been a major theme for me in my own life. But then I'm looking at all of these conference talks and I'm seeing like the happiness is now, like our covenants are now, that we make these choices, and those choices lead to the things that we ultimately want. And so I would say that choose to stay.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think I would echo what Sister Spanos said. She said, everything changes when I know who I really am. I think ask Heavenly Father and get to know who you really are. That's so probably beautiful. My simple way to do it. I can't wait to dive more in with you guys individually on different topics after our conversation today. So Thank you all so much.
We did it.
Thank you. So fun to be together.
Before we say goodbye, I'm so excited to tell you guys about the General Conference Journal Edition. So you can pre-order now for this last General Conference. It's a spiral-bound paperback book with extra wide margins, and it has all the conference talks in one place so you can take notes and document all the insights you receive. It's a great way to dive even deeper into the wonderful words we heard this weekend. You can find it at desertbook.com, and you can search General Conference Journal, and we'll link it in our show notes as well. Pre-order now. You're not going to want to miss it. Thank you so much for being here with us. It was so fun to step in today from behind the scenes, and I love this discussion and this conversation. We would love for all of you to join us in our community, so head over to Instagram and follow @Magnify Community, where we will be sharing more of our insights and our inspirations from General Conference. And I'd especially love to hear the one thing that you felt like you want to learn more about after this weekend or go forward studying. Share with us over on Instagram. We'll have a post ready for you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.